The night sky stretched endlessly above the New Mexico desert as Alex Carter adjusted the massive telescope at Pinewood Observatory. At 35, he had grown used to the quiet solitude of his work. Most astronomers preferred the advanced facilities in major cities, but Alex found peace in this remote outpost. Just a few more hours, he muttered to himself, checking his watch. 2:17 a.m. The night was clear, perfect for observing the meteor shower predicted to peak around 3 a.m. He glanced at his notes and took a sip of lukewarm coffee when something caught his eye through the telescope viewfinder. A strange light pattern, unlike anything he'd documented before. Not a meteor, not a satellite. The lights moved in a zigzag pattern, then descended rapidly toward Earth. Alex grabbed his jacket and binoculars. Whatever it was, it seemed to be landing not far from the observatory. "This is crazy," Alex whispered as he climbed into his old pickup truck. The rational part of his brain told him to call someone, but who would believe him? Besides, his curiosity was too strong to ignore. He drove about 3 miles into the desert, following the direction where he'd seen the lights disappear. The moon provided just enough illumination to navigate the rough terrain. Then he saw it, a disturbed patch of earth with something metallic reflecting the moonlight. Alex parked and approached cautiously, flashlight in hand. What he found took his breath away. A craft about the size of a small airplane, but unlike any aircraft he'd ever seen. Its smooth surface had an almost liquid quality, with no visible seams or rivets. One side was damaged, revealing complex inner workings that pulsed with a soft blue light. "Hello," Alex called out, his voice sounding strange in the empty desert. "Is anyone there?" A sound from behind a nearby rock made him jump. Alex swung his flashlight toward it and froze. A woman stood there, watching him. At first glance, she appeared human, but as she stepped closer, Alex noticed subtle differences. Her skin had a faint iridescent quality, and her eyes were an impossible shade of violet that seemed to reflect light like a cat's. Her dark hair was cut in a simple style, and she wore a close-fitting jumpsuit made of material he couldn't identify. She was injured. A cut above her eye leaked a silvery fluid, and she held her side as if in pain. "Are you okay?" Alex asked, taking a step toward her. She responded in a language he couldn't understand, musical and complex, with sounds he wasn't sure a human throat could make. Alex pointed to himself. "Alex," he said clearly. The woman stared at him, then pointed to herself and made a sound that seemed impossible to pronounce. It reminded him of wind chimes caught in a breeze. He gestured toward the observatory in the distance. "Come with me. I can help you." She seemed to understand his intent, if not his words. She nodded but stumbled as she tried to walk. Alex moved quickly to support her, and she leaned against him, surprisingly light despite being nearly his height. As they made their way back to his truck, she suddenly stiffened and looked up at the sky. In rapid, urgent tones, she spoke again, pointing upward. Alex looked but saw nothing. When he turned back to her, their eyes met, and he saw fear there, a universal emotion that needed no translation. She swayed, then collapsed against him. Alex caught her in his arms, feeling the strange warmth of her body as she went limp. "Hey, stay with me," he said, lowering her gently to the ground. Her eyes fluttered open once more, and she whispered something. Then, before losing consciousness, she pressed a small metallic object into his hand, a device unlike anything he'd ever seen. Alex looked from the unconscious woman to the strange craft and back again. His life had just become infinitely more complicated. Alex carried the unconscious woman into his cabin, which sat a quarter-mile from the main observatory building. His hands trembled as he laid her on the couch. What was he thinking? He should call someone. The police, the military, someone who knew how to handle this situation. But something stopped him. The fear in her eyes before she collapsed. The way she pressed that strange device into his palm, as if entrusting him with something precious. "What am I supposed to do with you?" he muttered, checking her pulse. It was there, but faster than human normal. He cleaned the cut above her eye with antiseptic, noting how the silvery substance had already started to dry. Her breathing seemed steady now. In the cabin's warm light, Alex could better see the subtle differences in her appearance, the way her skin seemed to shift colors slightly when she moved, how her ears tapered to small points at the top. The woman stirred and Alex stepped back, suddenly aware of how strange this all was. Her eyes opened, those impossible violet irises focusing on him. "Water," Alex offered, holding out a glass. She sat up slowly, studying the glass with caution before taking it. After a small sip, she nodded in thanks. "My name is Alex," he tried again, pointing to himself. The woman watched his lips carefully. Then, in a voice that sounded like she was testing each sound, she said, "Alex." "Yes," he smiled. "And you are?" She placed a hand on her chest. What came out was still that wind chime sound, but she seemed to simplify it. "Lyra," she said finally, though the way she pronounced it made it sound exotic and musical. "Lyra," Alex repeated. "Are you not from Earth?" Lyra tilted her head, clearly not understanding the question. She pointed to the small device Alex had placed on the coffee table. He handed it to her, and she pressed her thumb against its surface. It hummed to life, projecting a three-dimensional array of symbols into the air between them. Alex gasped, "That's incredible." Lyra manipulated the symbols, her fingers moving through them like a pianist playing an invisible instrument. After a few minutes, she pointed to the device, and then to her ear. "You want me to put this in my ear?" Alex asked, confused. Lyra shook her head and pointed to herself, then touched her temple. She tapped the device again, and a small piece separated from it. She carefully placed this behind her ear, where it seemed to meld with her skin. For the next hour, Lyra focused intently on Alex's television, which he turned on at her request. She watched news programs, repeating words quietly to herself. The speed at which she absorbed language was astonishing. By dawn, she could form basic sentences. "I learn your words," she said carefully. "Need help. Danger comes." "What danger? Who's after you?" Alex asked. A look of frustration crossed her face as she struggled with the language barrier. "My people. Not good ones. Bad ones." Before Alex could ask more, his phone rang. It was Diane from the observatory. "Alex, there are government vehicles pulling up to the main building. Men in suits asking questions about unusual activity last night. Did you see anything?" Alex looked at Lyra, who had gone very still. "No," he lied. "Nothing out of the ordinary." After hanging up, he turned to Lyra. "People are looking for you." She nodded gravely. "They find ship. Will find me next. Must hide. Why should I help you?" Alex asked, though he was already considering how to conceal her presence. Lyra touched the device behind her ear, struggling to find the right words. Finally, she looked directly into his eyes. "Because," she said, "your world depends on it." A week passed since Lyra had crashed into Alex's life. Her command of English improved at a rate that astounded him. Each day, she mastered new words, idioms, and expressions, though her accent remained distinctly musical. "Your language is simple," she explained one evening as they sat by the fireplace. "My people learn quickly. It is how we survive." Alex nodded, still trying to process her claim that she came from a planet called Ilara. And where exactly is Ilara? Lyra hesitated, as she always did when asked direct questions about her origins. Instead of answering, she walked to the window and pointed to a faint star visible in the night sky. "There, but not there now. My home moves." "A mobile planet?" Alex asked, eyebrows raised. "No more questions tonight," she said firmly, drawing the curtains close. This had become a pattern. Lyra would share small details about herself, then close off completely. Though frustrating, Alex respected her caution. After all, men in dark SUVs still patrolled the area daily, and twice they had stopped at the observatory to question staff. "I need to go to work," Alex said, grabbing his jacket. "Will you be okay alone?" Lyra nodded, already turning to the stack of books she'd been devouring. "I will continue learning." At the observatory, Diane Martinez cornered Alex in the break room. Her dark eyes narrowed with suspicion. "You've been acting strange all week," she said. "Coming in late, leaving early. And yesterday I called your cabin when you didn't show up, but you never answered." Alex shrugged, trying to appear casual. "Been working on a personal project. Lost track of time." "Does this project have anything to do with those government agents asking about unusual lights last Thursday night?" Before Alex could answer, his phone buzzed with a text from his cabin's security system. Someone was approaching the front door. "I have to go," he said abruptly, leaving Diane staring after him. When Alex reached the cabin, he found everything seemingly normal. Lyra sat reading on the couch, but her posture was tense. "Someone came," she said quietly. "I hid in the closet." "The security alert," Alex nodded. "Did you see who it was?" "A woman. Your friend from work." Alex sighed. "Diane. She's getting suspicious." That night, Alex woke to the sound of Lyra crying out in her sleep. He rushed to the guest room to find her thrashing in bed, the lamp beside her flickering wildly. In fact, every electronic device in the room was malfunctioning, the digital clock flashing random numbers, his old radio turning on and off. "Lyra, wake up," he called, keeping his distance. Something told him not to touch her while this was happening. Her eyes snapped open, and instantly all the electronics stabilized. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "The nightmares sometimes cause problems." "You did that?" Alex asked, gesturing to the electronics. "How?" Lyra sat up, pushing her hair back from her face. For once, she didn't avoid the question. "My people have a connection to electromagnetic energy. When our emotions are strong, it manifests physically." To demonstrate, she held out her hand. The lamp dimmed, then brightened at her apparent command. "That's incredible," Alex said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "What else can you do?" Instead of answering, Lyra lifted a heavy wooden chair with one hand, holding it above her head without any visible strain. "Our gravity is stronger than yours. I am not special among my kind," she said, setting the chair down gently. Alex stared at her, suddenly understanding just how alien she truly was. Yet somehow he wasn't afraid. "Why did you come to Earth, Lyra?" "The real reason." She looked at him for a long moment, her violet eyes reflecting the moonlight from the window. "To save it," she finally said. "But I fear I may have doomed it instead." Before Alex could ask what she meant, the sound of an approaching helicopter broke the night silence. The helicopter's searchlight swept across the cabin grounds as Alex pulled Lyra away from the window. "We need to move," he whispered, grabbing a backpack he prepared for this exact scenario. "They've found us." They slipped out the back door and into the woods behind the cabin. The cool night air filled their lungs as they ran between trees, using the forest as cover. Lyra moved with unexpected grace, barely making a sound despite the fallen leaves and branches underfoot. After 20 minutes of hard running, they reached a small clearing where Alex had hidden his old truck under a camouflage tarp. As he uncovered it, the sound of vehicles approaching echoed through the trees. "They're close," Lyra said, her voice steady despite the danger. They climbed into the truck, and Alex turned the key. Nothing happened. He tried again, but the engine refused to start. "Let me," Lyra said, placing her hand on the dashboard. Her skin glowed faintly in the darkness as she closed her eyes. Suddenly, the truck roared to life without Alex touching the ignition. "How did you?" "Drive now. Questions later," she cut him off. They had barely made it to the main road when headlights appeared behind them. 3 black SUVs gave chase, gaining ground quickly. "We can't outrun them," Alex said, gripping the steering wheel tightly. Lyra looked back at their pursuers, then made a decision. "Turn here." She pointed to a narrow dirt road. Alex obeyed, the truck bouncing violently on the rough terrain. The SUVs followed. When they reached a dead end at the edge of a cliff overlooking the valley, Alex turned to Lyra in panic. Now what? Instead of answering, she stepped out of the truck and faced the approaching vehicles. As the SUVs came to a stop, agents poured out, weapons drawn. "Stop right there," a woman's voice commanded. She stepped forward from the group, her badge catching the moonlight. "Agent Catherine Walsh, Department of Special Affairs. We have you surrounded." Alex moved to stand beside Lyra, his heart pounding. She hasn't done anything wrong. Agent Walsh ignored him, her eyes fixed on Lyra. "We know what you are. We recovered your ship." Lyra straightened her posture, suddenly looking more alien than human despite her ordinary appearance. "Then you know I am not here to harm anyone." "That remains to be seen," Walsh replied coldly. "You'll both come with us for questioning." "Wait," Alex intervened. "Before we go anywhere, I deserve to know what's happening." "Lyra, please, tell me the truth. All of it." The agents kept their weapons trained on them, but no one moved to interfere as Lyra took a deep breath. "My people have been watching Earth for centuries," she began, her voice clear in the night air. "We study developing civilizations, but recently something changed." She looked up at the stars before continuing. "My world is dying. Resources depleted. Atmosphere degrading. Some of my people believe Earth could be our new home." "An invasion," Walsh stated flatly. "No," Lyra shook her head. "Not all of us. There are factions. Those who wish to cooperate with humans, share knowledge, and those who see you as primitive, expendable." Alex felt his world tilting on its axis. "You came here to warn us." Lyra nodded. "I was sent as a scout by the militant faction, but I couldn't be part of their plan. When I tried to contact Earth authorities with a warning, my own people shot down my ship." "Why should we believe you?" Walsh demanded. Lyra reached slowly into her pocket and pulled out a small crystal device. "Because I brought proof. Data on their invasion plans, numbers, technology. Everything you need to prepare." "She's telling the truth," Alex insisted. "She's been hiding from them as much as from you." Walsh studied them both for a long moment, then lowered her weapon slightly. "If what you're saying is true, we're facing an extraterrestrial threat unlike anything we've prepared for." "Yes," Lyra confirmed, her violet eyes reflecting starlight. "The first ships will arrive within months. I thought I could prevent it, but by defecting, I may have accelerated their timeline." She looked at Alex, and for the first time, he saw the full weight of her burden. "I came to save Earth, but I fear I've only ensured its destruction. I'm sorry." The revelation hung in the air between them as the reality of their situation became clear. Earth was caught in the crossfire of an alien conflict, and time was running out. The next 12 hours passed in a blur. Agent Walsh ordered her team to lower their weapons, but insisted on taking Alex and Lyra to a secure location. At the last moment, Walsh received an urgent call that changed everything. "We need to move now," she said, her face pale. "There's been a breach at headquarters. Our security has been compromised." "It's them," Lyra said with certainty. "My people have infiltrated your government." Walsh nodded grimly. "The only safe option is to disappear. My team and I will create a diversion while you two escape." She handed Alex a set of keys. "Take my personal vehicle. It's not in any database." 20 minutes later, Alex guided a nondescript sit-in down empty back roads, Lyra silent beside him. The rising sun painted the desert landscape in gold and amber. "Where are we going?" Lyra finally asked. "To someone I trust," Alex replied. "An old friend who lives off the grid. If anyone can help us, Jack can." They drove for 6 hours, stopping only for gas and food. By mid-afternoon, they reached a remote property surrounded by mountains, A small airstrip with a single hangar stood beside a modest cabin. A man with weathered skin and gray-streaked hair stepped onto the porch, shotgun in hand. When he recognized Alex, he lowered the weapon. "Alex Carter," he said with a cautious smile. "Been a while." "Jack Peters." Alex nodded. "We need your help." Inside the cabin, Jack listened without interruption as they explained the situation. Lyra demonstrated her abilities to prove her origins, lifting Jack's heavy oak table with one hand. "I flew combat missions for 20 years, Jack said when they finished. "Thought I'd seen everything. Guess I was wrong." "Will you help us?" Alex asked. Jack studied Lyra for a long moment. "Your people, the ones coming to Earth, what exactly do they want?" Lyra's shoulders slumped as she answered. "Our world is dying. We've depleted our resources after millennia of technological advancement without wisdom to match it." She traced patterns on the wooden table with her finger. "The military faction believes Earth is the perfect solution. Similar atmosphere, abundant resources, and a population they consider dispensable." Alex felt his stomach tighten. "They'd wipe us out." "Not all at once," Lyra explained. "First, they would infiltrate key positions, then sabotage your defenses. The full invasion would come last." "And your peaceful faction?" Jack asked. "What do they propose?" "Cooperation. Sharing technology that could help both our species. They believe Earth has something we've lost. Diversity of thought, creativity. They want an alliance, not conquest." Jack stood up and walked to a locked cabinet. He returned with maps and communication equipment. "My old military contacts might help," he said. "But we need to reach out to the peaceful faction of your people first. Is that possible?" Lyra nodded slowly. "With the right equipment, I could modify the observatory's radio telescope to send a message they would recognize." "That means going back," Alex said. "Right into danger." "We don't have a choice," Lyra replied. "The militant faction has already begun their plans. Our only hope is to contact the peace faction before it's too late." Jack checked his watch. "I can fly you back tonight. My old plane isn't much, but it's got stealth modifications the military doesn't know about." As Jack prepared the aircraft, Alex found Lyra standing outside, staring at the stars beginning to appear in the evening sky. "You're risking everything for us," he said quietly. "A planet that isn't even yours." Lyra turned to him, her violet eyes reflecting the first stars. "When I first came to Earth, I was following orders. But then I saw your world. The beauty, the life, the potential. I couldn't be part of destroying that." She looked back to the sky, where her home star twinkled faintly. "My people once valued life above all else. Somewhere along our path, we forgot that. I won't make the same mistake." As Jack called them to the waiting plane, Alex realized how much had changed in just a few days. The universe had become infinitely larger and more dangerous. But somehow, standing beside this woman from the stars, he felt ready to face whatever came next. Jack's small plane cut through the night sky, flying low to avoid detection. In the passenger seats, Alex and Lyra reviewed their plan one final time. The observatory's radio telescope was their only hope of contacting Lyra's peaceful faction. "We're 10 minutes out," Jack called from the cockpit. "But we've got company." Alex peered through the window to see 2 helicopters circling the observatory complex. Floodlights swept across the grounds. "Government agents," he muttered. "No," Lyra said, her expression grim. "Look at their flight pattern. Those are my people. They moved too precisely." Jack diverted the plane, landing in a small clearing 2 miles from the observatory. As they hiked through the darkness, Lyra suddenly pulled them behind a large boulder. "Someone's coming," she whispered. Moments later, Agent Walsh emerged from the trees, weapon drawn. When she saw them, she quickly lowered her gun. "I figured you'd come back here," she said. "The observatory is the only place with equipment powerful enough to send a deep space message." "Are you alone?" Alex asked cautiously. Walsh nodded. My team was compromised. I've been tracking alien activity in the area. They've taken over the main building. Lyra studied Walsh carefully. Why would you help us now? Because I've seen enough to know you're telling the truth, Walsh replied. 3 of my agents were replaced by beings that looked exactly like them, but weren't. I barely escaped. She pulled out a tablet and showed them thermal imaging of the observatory. Several figures moved inside, but their heat signatures were different from human patterns. They're advanced scouts, Lyra explained. Gathering intelligence, securing strategic locations. Walsh put away the tablet. I've been with the Department of Special Affairs for 15 years. We've always known about extraterrestrial visitors, but nothing like this. This is an invasion force. We need to reach the radio telescope, Alex said. It's our only chance. Walsh nodded. I can help. But first, I need to know everything. She looked directly at Lyra. No more secrets. Under the starlight, Lyra finally revealed the full truth. Her people had been watching Earth for centuries, studying human development. As their own world began dying, debate raged about what to do. The peaceful faction wanted to approach humans openly, offering technology in exchange for a new home for some of their people. But the military faction saw weakness in humanity's divisions. They planned to exploit those divisions, turning nations against each other while they quietly positioned themselves to take control. I was sent to assess Earth's defenses, Lyra admitted, her voice breaking. But what I found here changed me. Your art, your music, the way you care for each other despite your differences. I couldn't be part of destroying that. She looked down, unable to meet their eyes. When I tried to warn your authorities, my own commander attempted to kill me. My ship was damaged in the escape. That's when Alex found me. Walsh was silent for a long moment. So your people are already here, preparing for a full invasion? Yes, Lyra nodded. But if we can contact the peaceful faction, they might intercede. They have influence in our world's council. It's worth a shot, Walsh decided. I'll create a diversion at the north entrance. You 3 head for the radio telescope in the east wing. As they prepared to move out, Lyra suddenly broke down. Her shoulders shook as silver tears ran down her face. What if we're too late? She whispered. I've betrayed my people and possibly doomed yours. All these lives are in danger because of me. Alex pulled her into his arms, holding her as she trembled. Hey, look at me. You risked everything to warn us. Whatever happens, you did the right thing. He's right, Walsh said, checking her weapon. I've spent my career protecting Earth from threats. Never thought I'd be fighting alongside someone from another world. Jack nodded in agreement. Sometimes the right side of a fight isn't the side you were born on. It's the side you choose. Lyra wiped away her tears and straightened. With newfound determination in her violet eyes, she said, Then let's make our choice count. As the 4 unlikely allies prepared to move toward the observatory, the fate of 2 worlds hung in the balance. Agent Walsh's diversion worked perfectly. The sound of gunfire and explosions at the north entrance drew most of the alien scouts away from the east wing. Alex, Lyra, and Jack moved silently through the shadows toward the radio telescope control room. 2 guards at the door, Jack whispered, peering around the corner. Lyra touched Alex's arm. Let me handle this. Before they could stop her, she stepped into the open hallway. The guards immediately raised their weapons, but paused when they saw her. Commander Lyra, one of them said in their musical language, you survived. Yes, she replied in the same tongue. I've come to report directly to the council. As the guards hesitated, Lyra's hands moved in a blur. The air around her seemed to ripple as she channeled electromagnetic energy. Both guards collapsed to the floor, unconscious but alive. They'll wake up in about 20 minutes, she explained, motioning Alex and Jack forward. Inside the control room, Lyra worked quickly, modifying the telescope's transmission equipment with parts from her own devices. Her fingers danced across the controls with practiced precision. This will let us reach the peace faction directly, she explained. Their ships maintain a constant communication channel that the military doesn't know about. Alex helped where he could, following Lyra's instructions. Jack kept watch at the door. "How will they know to trust your message?" Alex asked. Lyra's hands paused briefly. "I'm including genetic verification. My DNA signature can't be faked." The modified equipment hummed to life, and Lyra began transmitting. The message was a series of sounds unlike anything Alex had heard before. Complex, mathematical, precise. "Now we wait," she said, stepping back from the console. Minutes passed in tense silence. Then the equipment crackled with a response. Similar tones, but in a different pattern. Lyra's face lit up. "They've received it. They're mobilizing immediately to intercept the invasion force." A sudden explosion shook the building. Walsh appeared at the doorway, her face streaked with dirt and blood from a small cut on her forehead. "We've got company," she announced. "The rest of the scouts are heading this way." "Did the message get through?" Jack asked. Lyra nodded. "Yes, but we need to hold this position. The Peace faction needs 18 minutes to reach Earth orbit and block the invasion ships." "Then we hold for 18 minutes, Walsh said, checking her ammunition. What followed was the longest 18 minutes of Alex's life. Alien scouts attacked in waves, their weapons emitting pulses of energy that left scorch marks on the walls. Walsh and Jack held the main entrance while Alex and Lyra defended the equipment. Just when their situation seemed hopeless, the radio telescope picked up new signals. Lyra translated rapidly. "The Peace faction has arrived. They're confronting the military ships in orbit." Outside, the attacking scouts suddenly withdrew, responding to new orders. The abrupt silence was almost as shocking as the battle had been. Hours later, as dawn broke over the New Mexico desert, representatives from the Peace faction landed in a small craft behind the observatory. Unlike the scouts, they made no attempt to disguise their alien nature. Their iridescent skin glowed softly in the morning light, and their movements were fluid and graceful. Government officials arrived soon after, led by Walsh's superiors. What followed was the first official diplomatic meeting between humanity and the people of Ilara. The peace agreement came together faster than anyone expected. The Ilarans would share technology, clean energy, advanced medicine, faster than light travel, in exchange for settlement rights in unpopulated areas of Earth. The military faction had been subdued, their leaders removed from power. 6 months later, Alex stood on the observation deck of the newly built Interspecies Cooperation Center. Beside him, Lyra watched as the first official Ilaran delegation arrived. "Did you ever imagine it would turn out like this?" he asked her. Lyra smiled, her violet eyes reflecting the sunset. "When I crashed here, I thought I had failed everyone, my people and yours. I never expected to find hope." Alex took her hand in his. Over the past months, their relationship had deepened into something neither of them had words for yet, something new, spanning 2 worlds. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now," she said, looking up at the stars that were just beginning to appear, "we build something better than either of our worlds managed alone." As the Ilaran ship landed, Alex realized that the universe had changed forever, not through invasion or conquest, but through understanding and cooperation. And it had all begun that night when an alien woman broke down in his arms, carrying a secret that would reshape human history. Together, they stepped forward to greet the future.